Vancouver Whitecaps is a Canadian football team that plays mostly in the American Major League Soccer. While most MLS teams were created after 1996, Whitecaps were one of the teams that played even before the arrival of MLS. It has been playing in previous leagues to help improve the quality of football in the city of Vancouver and in the Canadian football team in general as a whole to rival the sport of hockey, which has been Canada's most popular sport. Hello, my name's Franklin, and today we'll be explaining the story about how the Whitecaps and how they grew into predominance in the city of Vancouver and in the MLS. So let's begin. The Vancouver Whitecaps were founded in 1974 by a group of local businessmen, including Herb Capozzi, Bob Carter, and Herb Quinn. They were originally the teams in the originally North American Soccer League, which used to be a professional soccer league in North America at the time. Under the guidance of head coach Tony Walters, who was later inducted into the Canadian Soccer Hall of Fame, the Whitecaps quickly established themselves as a competitive team in Nassau, particularly on a competitive day on September 8th, 1979. They achieved one of their greatest success by winning the North American Soccer League Super Bowl, which is kind of like the MLS Cup at the time, but like for Nassau, and also the final competition in the final battle of the entire season. So the entire season comes up to this point. They defeated Tampa Bay Rowdies 2-1 in the final, and this also solidified their victory and solidified them as a powerhouse in North American soccer. One of the early years saw some notable players who played for the Whitecaps jersey. One of the most famous strikers was Willie Johnston, whose skill and goal scoring prowess makes him a fan for fans and other viewers alike, including the Canadian international Bob Murzilli, or that's how you say it. I don't know how to spell Italian names, so my bad. But English striker Ray Lewington and Scottish forward Leon Ball. Also, Leon Luzi, it was a versatile player who also contributed both defensively and offensively and played a pivotal role in the Whitecaps midfield and became a club legend. The Whitecaps garnered a significant amount of support from the local Vancouver community during this period. Their matches at the Empire Stadium was often attracted large crowds and showcasing their growing popularity in the sport of soccer in the region. Unfortunately, this was the 1980s or the early 1980s, I suppose, and the economy was really horrible at the time, nearly almost as bad as the 1930s Great Depression, but isn't really that bad, but it was the worst since then. So like high cost of operations and player salaries was an ongoing difficulty for Whitecaps to support, and they faced many financial challenges during their time in the league. Despite their success on the field and strong fan base, Nassau faced financial challenges and eventually folded in 1984. This led to a transition period for the Whitecaps as they saw a new direction for the club's future. After Nassau folded in 1984, the Whitecaps were inactive for a couple of years before joining the Canadian Soccer League in 1987. The CSL provided a platform for Canadian soccer teams to continue playing professionally even after Nassau's demise. The Whitecaps competed against other Canadian teams as well as international teams. During their years, the Whitecaps had varying degrees of success on the field as they were competitive in the league but didn't achieve the same amount of dominance as they once did under Nassau. Some players who had been part of the Whitecaps during Nassau continued as the club transitioned to the Canadian Soccer League. Players like Bob Luarazzi, who became synonymous with the Whitecaps, continued to make contributions with the team. The Whitecaps also introduced a new talent during their CSL years, blending experienced players with emerging stars, maintaining the competitiveness of the league. The transition to Canadian Soccer League coincided with many financial challenges, not only for Whitecaps but for many soccer clubs in North America. This period was dark for soccer, as many other sports was rising in the ranks and overcoming soccer, leaving it to the dust, as it had no clear foundation for which players could play in, which left this serious void in the heart of soccer in North America. This period was marked by instability and uncertainty, even when the Canadian Soccer League itself would eventually disband in 1992, leading to another shift to the Whitecaps to other teams, and their years for Canadian soccer is over, and they would have to find another divisions to play in. Despite the challenges faced in the Canadian Soccer League years, the Whitecaps continued to be a recognizable and respectable name in Canadian soccer. Their history and their fan base has a strong foundation for their future endeavors. The Whitecaps initially played in lower leagues as they were preparing for their entry to the MLS. They participated in the United Soccer Leagues or USL and made significant strides to develop their organization, fan base, and infrastructure. The Whitecaps used their time in the USL or A League as they call it to organize and rebuild their organization and develop local talents and maintain a presence on an otherwise difficult professional soccer scene. Despite competing in lower divisions, the Whitecaps maintained a loyal fan base in Vancouver and engaged in the local community through soccer initiatives, outreach programs, and fan events. As the fans gather around in Swangard Stadium to see the Whitecaps play football every weekend, which really helped the club maintain and keep their presence. As they went through their tenure during the UCL, consistently challenging for playoff spots and displaying a high level of performance, their Whitecaps' competitivity throughout their tenure were during their highlights of the UCL era was winning the UCL championship in two different occasions. They claimed the title in 2006 and again in 2008, showing their quality and competitiveness in the league in the UCL, consistently challenging all four playoff spots and displaying a high level of performance. The Whitecaps' success in the UCL will include their championship victories, played a crucial role in preparing the club for its transition to the Major League Soccer, who has been growing their foundations in American soccer and Canadian soccer as they would be spreading out to Canada in 2007 with the arrival of Toronto FC in 2007, as I said. They're looking to bring the historic club of Vancouver Whitecaps into the squad as one of their teams for the MLS season. And in 2009, the Whitecaps were announced to be an expansion team for the MLS, marking a significant milestone in their journey as they prepare to be competing in top tier league. The new era for Vancouver Whitecaps occur as their debut to the Major League Soccer along with their fellow clubs of Portland Timbers and Montreal Impact, one of the clubs having a long and successful history just like the Whitecaps with the Timbers, who has been previously playing in NASL. I'll make a future video about the Timbers, by the way. They would be joining the league in 2011 as an expansion team, and they will be playing their home matches in the BC Place Stadium, a modern and iconic venue in Vancouver, making Vancouver Whitecaps having one of the most iconic and also one of the greatest stadiums in the MLS. Like many expansion teams, the Whitecaps faced the initial challenges as they adapt their higher level competition in the MLS, but they showed their promise and competitiveness in the inaugural season. Scottish coach Martin Rennie took charge of the team during this period, bringing his tactical approach and vision to the squad. Under Rennie's leadership, the Whitecaps made progress on the field, improving their performances and competing for playoff spots. The Whitecaps continued to strengthen their squad and compete in higher levels of the MLS. Players like Camilo Venezo, Pedro Morez, and Kendra Watson made significant contributions to the team's success during these years. They undergo a transition phase during these years, focusing on the coaching staff and player personnel as they continue to produce young development talent and the integration of young talent to the first team, aiming for long-term success, like selling youth product Alfonso Davis to major German club Bayern Munich in 2019. The club continued to compete in the MLS, aiming to regain momentum and establishing themselves as contenders of the MLS Cup. And they consistently made themselves into the playoffs as late as 2024 last season when they finished off in the first round after being defeated by Los Angeles FC. Throughout their journey in Major League Soccer, the Vancouver Whitecaps had shown resilience, adaptivity, and commitment to a competitive team. Their progress and developments in the MLS have contributed to the growth of soccer in Vancouver, Canada, and their standings in North American soccer. They have a rivalry with Portland Timbers as they are also again rivaling with Seattle Sounders, who was a fellow team who had the same amount of long periods as the Whitecaps, even competing against each other way back in NASL Championship Super Bowl final in 1979. So their rivalry still remains, and they will also like to compete against Toronto FC, who combat their previous dominance over Canadian football, as they was one of the first Canadian clubs to win the Canadian Championship, the CONCACAF Champions League, and the MLS Cup, all in the year 2017. For coming back to Vancouver, they won two Canadian championships, one in 2015 and another one in 2023. And one of their best players are Yohei Bakatoa, who is a goalkeeper, Brian White, who is a forward, Andreas Kulbis, who is a central defensive midfielder, and Ali Ahmed.